This is All 24 News World News Program live from Algiers, and up next are tonight's top stories. A wave of recognition for Palestine. The wave, or the flag, is now flying over the embassy in London and is being raised by cities across France. Algeria signs declaration to protect aid workers. Ataf joins UN's 80th anniversary, and Algiers hails Africa's push to correct historical injustice. Also coming up, Makhzen cracks down on protests over Zionist ships as activists warn Morocco is moving from normalization to full Israelization. And later on, Russia accuses NATO of fueling tensions. Britain says the alliance is ready for direct confrontation. And Algeria warns of rising escalation in Eastern Europe. The details are straight ahead. Welcome back to the program. The UN General Assembly opened in New York with a conference on the two-state solution expected to bring new momentum for Palestine's recognition. President Mahmoud Abbas addressed the meeting by video conference after Washington denied visas to his delegation. The conference follows recognition from 10 more countries, raising the total to 159 out of 193 UN members. At the United Nations, Algeria welcomed the two-state solution conference, calling it the product of a genuine international consensus. Delivering President Abdelmajid Tebboun's speech, Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf stressed that this consensus is the strongest safeguard for a just and lasting settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Algeria urged concrete action on 4 fronts: wider recognition of Palestine, granting it full UN membership, resisting Israel's annexation plans, and uniting the Palestinian ranks. Attaf underlined the time has come to turn words into action, ensuring Palestine's right to statehood on its historic land.
ترحب الجزائر
Algeria welcomes the convening of this conference, which stems from a genuine international consensus. This consensus constitutes the principal guarantee for a just, lasting, and final settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It stands as a solid bulwark against Israel's expansionist policies pursued under the guise of the so-called Greater Israel myth. Moreover, this international consensus is the most forceful response to the illusions of the Israeli occupation and its presumptions that it alone holds the authority to veto the establishment of a Palestinian state on Palestinian soil. The time has come for concrete action to embody this consensus and to enforce it across several levels. The first level is the broadening of the base of official recognitions of the State of Palestine as an irreversible international reality. The second level is enabling the State of Palestine to attain full membership in this organization, a membership consistently championed and advocated for from this very international platform by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. The third level lies in diplomatic, legal, political, and economic confrontation of the occupation schemes aimed at annexing Palestinian territories and uprooting the Palestinian people from their historic land. As for the fourth and final level, it concerns the Palestinian domestic front, which must consolidate its ranks and unify its voice so as to restore independence to its decision-making, strength to its action, and resonance to its voice, both regionally and internationally.
For the first time, the Palestinian flag was raised over the embassy in London just hours after Britain's historic recognition of the State of Palestine. The ceremony was attended by a British official, ambassadors, and party representatives.
Palestine will rise and Palestine will be free. Thank you.
Palestinian Ambassador Hussam Zomlot called the flag raising in London a historic moment and a step toward freedom, stressing that Britain's recognition ends decades of denial of Palestinian rights and affirms their right to self-determination.
In the same capital of the Balfour Declaration, after more than a century of ongoing denial, dispossession and erasure, the UK government has finally taken the long overdue step of recognizing the state of Palestine. It is about ending the denial of the Palestinian people's inalienable right to freedom and self-determination. And it is an acknowledgement of a historic injustice. Ladies and gentlemen, Palestine exists. It has always existed, and it always will.
British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has warned the occupation against using the recognition of Palestine as a pretext to annex parts of the West Bank, stating that recognition is the best way to achieve security in the Middle East.
So this is a historic step and a moral step, which we're taking alongside our allies to recognise the state of Palestine in order to keep the hope of the two-state solution alive at a time when there is a real risk that it is in peril as a result of the devastation in Gaza, the continued holding of hostages and the expansion of settlements. And if we don't act now, the risk is that everyone will just turn their backs on the two-stage solution that is the only lasting way to get peace and security for the region. That is why it's so important.
Several French municipalities raised the Palestinian flag on their buildings after Paris recognized the state of Palestine, defying the French government and court rulings against the move. Zafar Jani has more.
Over 50 French municipalities have raised the Palestinian flag high above their town halls, openly defying Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau's threat to take them to administrative court if they disobey his orders. The move comes as Paris formally recognizes the state of Palestine at the United Nations.
We decided to raise the flag on Friday and lower it on Tuesday, simply because we had other events planned in the city. The Interior Minister ordered us to take it down. We refused. 2 hours later, we were summoned to a hearing at the administrative court. On Saturday, at 9 a.m., we were notified to appear at 11 a.m. We stand with the Palestinian people. This gesture is symbolically very important.
It is important to show that this recognition is a step in the right direction. Yes, it comes very late, but it's needed now, so other countries can follow suit, put an end to the massacres in Gaza and the West Bank, and finally, allow the Palestinian people to live freely in a state alongside Israel.
Left-wing parties have led the campaign urging the French government to recognize Palestine, organizing rallies and solidarity gatherings with growing calls to raise the Palestinian flag across municipalities nationwide.
France's recognition of Palestine and soon that of 9 other countries is a way of saying we cannot ignore the need of a two-state solution, something we have been calling for a very long time.
France's official recognition of Palestine is happening, and that's good, but we must admit it came far too late. It feels like we are recognizing a state that already looks like a cemetery, given the horrific situation in Gaza and the West Bank.
Major municipalities across France are standing up to Bruno Retailleau, raising the Palestinian flag in a move that further widens the political divide, with the government accused by critics of leading the country to disaster.
Palestine called on all countries to recognize its statehood, stressing it is the only path to peace and security in the region. Presidential spokesman Nabila Bourdaina welcomed Britain's recognition, describing it as an important step that proves a two-state solution remains viable and strengthens the Palestinian people's right to self-determination.
The recognition of the UK is very important because this proves that the two-state solution is still living, and Britain is an old ally of the United States and Israel. Now it's taking the right direction, the right policy, and this is very important, and we encourage all countries to recognize the state of Palestine, because this is the only way for peace and security in the area. Without a Palestinian state, without the two-state solution, there won't be security or peace in the region as well.
Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov reaffirmed Moscow's support for the two-state solution and the establishment of a Palestinian state, stressing that it is the only way to resolve the long-standing conflict in the Middle East.
We remain committed to the fundamental resolutions of the UN Security Council. I remain committed to the international position, the possibility of resolving the Palestinian-Israeli problem on the basis of a two-state approach.
On the ground on Gaza and on the 117th day of the genocidal war on this trip, at least 39 Palestinians were killed in ongoing Zionist bombings targeting homes and displacement camps. Hospital sources said 32 people died in Gaza City under heavy destruction and forced evacuations, while 6 others, including a child, were killed in Deir al-Balah and Nusayrat. In Khan Younis, a 5-year-old girl lost her life to starvation at the Nasser Medical Complex.
Our house was destroyed in Zaytun, and we fled here. I wanted to go to the south to find a place with my wife. My daughter stayed inside. Have mercy on us.
Following the recent recognitions of Palestinian statehood by Britain, Canada, Australia and Portugal, Palestinians in the occupied West Bank have expressed a renewed sense of hope, though many remain cautious about what concrete changes may follow. Yasin Rekti reports now.
In Ramallah, the Palestinian flag floated as local newspapers hailed a historic moment: the recognition of a Palestinian state by the UK, Australia, Canada and Portugal. Many Palestinians welcome the move as an achievement and a glimmer of hope, but alongside optimism, there is caution. Some in the occupied West Bank voiced doubts about what comes next, calling for tangible steps to end the decades-long Israeli occupation.
These raids and arrests in the West Bank and Gaza are a response to recognition because it is not in Israel's interest. Israel rejects recognition and does not want a Palestinian state. They oppose a Palestinian state. Israel, on the other hand, is opposed to it. So we hope that a state will emerge, that we will be free and settle down, God willing.
In refugee camps across Lebanon, Jordan and Syria, reactions were mixed. Displaced Palestinians described the recognition as too little, too late, stressing that symbolic gestures cannot replace real progress toward justice and self-determination.
Before the recognition, I was a refugee, and after the recognition, I am a refugee in front of you. Nothing has changed for us. I believe that these are just formalities, and their goal is to reduce the tension among the Western peoples who took to the streets. If their goal is a Palestinian state or the Palestinian people, they can stop the massacres and stop the supply of weapons to the Zionist entity.
The momentum is expected to grow, with more world leaders set to announce recognition at the UN General Assembly. Yet on the ground, change appears distant. The Israeli occupation's most extremist government in history has ruled out the creation of a Palestinian state, pressing ahead with its military offensive on Gaza and settlement expansion in the occupied West Bank.
Now, this recognition of the state of Palestine is a positive thing, but it's just talk. Nothing is being implemented on the ground. Gaza has been subjected to genocide for 2 years in implementation of Israeli plans, so I hope they take action on the ground by stopping the war on Gaza and allowing aid in, helping them, not displacing them.
For many Palestinians, recognition is a step forward, but still far from the breakthrough needed to end the genocide in Gaza and achieve the basic right to self-determination through a sovereign, independent state.
Algeria signed the Universal Declaration on the Protection of Humanitarian Workers at the UN General Assembly in New York, reaffirming its commitment to safe and unhindered aid delivery Foreign Minister and Minister of State Ahmed Attaf took part in the lunch ceremony, with the Foreign Ministry stressing that the move aligns with the international humanitarian law and comes amid escalating attacks on aid workers, especially in Gaza, now among the most dangerous places for humanitarian operations. Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf took part in a high-level UN General Assembly session in New York, marking the organization's 80th anniversary. The Foreign Ministry said the meeting reviewed the UN's achievements in peace, security, development, and human rights, while addressing today's global challenges and renewing commitment to the Charter's principles for a more inclusive and effective multilateral system. Algeria praised the achievements of the African Union's Committee of 10 on the UN Security Council reform during its 7th summit in New York. Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf highlighted the committee's success in broadening support for its common stance and building global understanding of its unique cause as the AU marked 20 years since the Isolwini Consensus.
And looking back at our collective journey, Algeria believes that our action has made a significant breakthrough in 3 aspects. First, Africa has succeeded in broadening the base of support for its common position. Today, our common position enjoys growing support among UN member states and interest groups. We take this as a token of recognition of both the legitimacy and the relevance of Africa's demands as articulated in the Isolwini Consensus. Second, Africa has also succeeded in fostering a global understanding of the particularity of its case. The reason being, on one hand, that our position embodies the collective will of the 55 member states of the African Union, and on the other hand, that it aims first and foremost to correct the historical injustice inflicted upon our continent.
On Saturday evening, security forces in the Moroccan city of Meknes suppressed a peaceful march protesting the arrival of ships carrying weapons bound for the Zionist entity in Gaza. Moroccan anti-normalization groups and the local branch of the BDS movement condemned the violent dispersal of protesters, holding the authorities responsible for complicity in facilitating the passage of military shipments used in the war on Gaza.
At the height of the genocidal war waged by the Zionist occupation on Gaza, the Moroccan authorities have opened our ports to the genocide fleet, granting it a safe passage to fuel the Zionist killing machine. The movement strongly condemns the violent security intervention and repression carried out against peaceful protesters opposing this complicity. It stresses that such actions constitute a blatant violation of all international conventions that guarantee freedom of expression and assembly.
The Moroccan Observatory for Combating Normalization accused the Makhzen of pushing the country toward comprehensive Israelization. Secretary General Aziz Hannawi said Essaouira had been turned into a settlement, denouncing the participation of hundreds of Zionists in Haylula prayers for occupation forces, while authorities banned prayers for Gaza's victims in Friday's sermons.
The scandal of praying for the Zionist forces, in parallel with the war of genocide against the Palestinian people from the settler city of Essaouira, led by the duo Azulai and Rabbi Pinto, is a declaration of a comprehensive Israelization of Morocco. Question to the Minister of Endowment and Islamic Affairs, Ahmed Tawfiq. How do you explain your decision to dismiss the head of the Scientific Council of the city of Figi because he expressed his opinion regarding the war of extermination in Gaza, while the head of the Scientific Council of the city of Essaouira is preparing a Haylula celebration?
Moving on to the war in Ukraine, Russian media reported that a Ukrainian drone attack on a resort area in the Crimean Peninsula on Monday killed 3 people and wounded 16 others more. On the other hand, Ukrainian media reported casualties in a Russian drone attack on the Zaporizhia region on Monday. The strikes hit central Ukraine, killing 3 people and injuring 2 others. Local sources said the raids caused damage to residential areas. On Monday, Russia accused NATO countries of escalating tensions after Estonia alleged that Russian aircraft violated its airspace. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed the accusation as baseless and empty, framing it as part of a NATO policy of provocation and confrontation.
Our Ministry of Defense categorically denied these claims. Furthermore, our military statement cited objective monitoring capabilities. We have never heard the Estonian claim to have data from objective monitoring capabilities. Therefore, we consider such claims void, ungrounded, and continuing an unbridled policy of inciting tension and provoking confrontational atmosphere.
British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper stated on Monday that NATO is prepared for a direct confrontation with Russia, announcing that British fighter jets have joined the alliance's Operation Eastern Sentinel to patrol Polish airspace.
At best, these latest acts are dangerous and reckless. At worst, they are a deliberate attempt to undermine the territorial integrity of sovereign nations and European security. They risk miscalculation. They open the door to direct armed confrontation between NATO and Russia. Our alliance is defensive, but be under no illusion. We stand ready to take all steps necessary to defend NATO's skies and NATO's territory. We are vigilant, and we are resolute. And if we need to confront planes that are operating in NATO airspace without permission, then we will do.
For its part, Algeria has voiced concern over developments that could further escalate tensions in Eastern Europe, following Estonia's accusation that Russia violated its airspace. Speaking during a UN Security Council briefing, Algeria's Deputy Permanent Representative Toufiq Al-Eid Koudri reiterated Algeria's call to avoid any action or reaction that might inflame the crisis. He stressed the importance of steering clear of polarization, warning that such dynamics only deepen instability at a time when diplomacy and restraint are most needed.
نجتمع اليوم على إثر تقارير تفيد بتحليق طائرات عسكرية روسية.
We are meeting today in response to a report that a Russian military aircraft flew in the airspace of the Republic of Estonia on September 19. Such development would exacerbate tensions and escalate the situation in a region still reeling from the fallout of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Algeria has repeatedly stressed the need to avoid any action or reaction that could fuel tensions. Algeria has also repeatedly stressed the danger of succumbing to the logic of polarization in the context of this conflict.
The Algerian diplomat emphasized that achieving peace in Ukraine requires intensified diplomatic efforts based on the UN Charter while addressing the security concerns of all parties involved. Let's take a listen again.
تبقى الجزائر على قناعة تامة.
Algeria remains fully convinced that achieving peace and security in Ukraine and through it in the region as a whole will only be achieved through intensifying diplomatic efforts aimed at finding a final solution to this conflict, the foundations of which are based on the principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter and take into account the legitimate security concerns of both parties. My country also renews its commitment to support any efforts that would contribute to maintaining international peace and security in the region.
Addressing the Russian president, moving on to a different matter now, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced on Monday his readiness to extend a New START nuclear treaty with the United States for 1 year on condition that the United States President Donald Trump agrees to the same step. The announcement came during a meeting of Russia's Security Council where Putin emphasized that the extension would support global non-proliferation efforts and help facilitate dialogue on a future arms control agreement. The treaty is set to expire in February 2026.
A complete rejection of the legacy of this agreement would be, in many respects, a mistaken and short-sighted step, which in our view would also negatively affect the achievement of the goals of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Therefore, after February 5, 2026, Russia is prepared to continue adhering to the central quantitative limits of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty for 1 year. Going forward, based on an analysis of the situation, we will make a decision if we continue adhering to these voluntary self-limitations. We believe this measure will only be viable if the United States acts in a similar manner.
And now the news in brief for Sofia Kanturi.
Iran announced it will sign agreements with Russia in the coming days to build new nuclear power units. Russia's news agency, citing Iran's atomic energy chief Mohammad Islami, said Monday the deal provides for Moscow to construct 8 nuclear power plants in Iran. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said he's open to future talks with the United States if Washington drops its demands for his country's nuclear disarmament. Kim expressed a desire for peaceful coexistence, provided the US abandons its denuclearization's demands. The European Union on Monday extended sanctions on both sides of Sudan's war for another year until October 10, 2026. According to Reuters, the measures include assets freezes and travel bans on 10 individuals and 8 entities from the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces. The 70th Algiers International Comics Festival will feature strong support for the Palestinian cause through events scheduled from October 1st to 5th. Festival director Salim Brahimi said Palestine will be highlighted in this year's children's edition, with Spain showcasing works by Palestinian artists from around the world.
That's the end of our news program for tonight. Thank you for watching and good night.